Madam Chair, if I may just remind the participants to mute themselves until it's their turn to speak so we don't get feedback.
Okay.
It looks like you're live.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to our EBA meeting for Friday afternoon. I think everyone is here to get started. I think Senator Zucker had a funeral to go to this afternoon. The order that will be in this afternoon, we're going to start with the governor's executive department budget. Then we'll do the University System of Maryland. Then we'll do the Board of Public Works, and finishing up with MHEC's student financial assistance. Okay. First up is the governor's office. Caleb Weiss is our analyst. Take it away.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Can everyone see the document? For the governor's executive department, in the fiscal 2023 budget allowance increases the budget by $579,000 or 4.8%. This brings the total for the department to $12.6 million. Moving ahead to Exhibit 1, which is an overview of agency spending. As you can see here, 85% of spending goes towards personnel. This is similar to prior years. The next largest category here is the Department of Information Technology service charges, which comprise 6% of agency spending. And then the remaining percentages are here in this second bar. For the proposed budget changes in Exhibit 2, as you can see here, the personnel changes comprise the largest changes over the prior year. That includes turnover expectancy, regular earnings, and accrued leave payout. The non-personnel changes are down here in the bottom section. And with that, DLS recommends concurring with the budget, the governor's allowance, and that marks the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
That was fast enough. Do we have any questions from the committee? The only question I would have, actually, I think we have governor's office here, and I'll ask them my question. Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you.
Okay, we have with us Miss Amelia Chase, Alcavar, Chief of Staff for the Governor's Office, and Ms. Mona Vaidya, who's the Director of Financial Administration. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good morning. I guess it's still morning. Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, Senator King. Thank you to the senators and the members of the committee for having us and for hearing us first. Much appreciated. And thank you to Mr. Weiss for the thorough analysis. I believe you all have my testimony. I won't take your time by reading all of it. I will just, as a point of personal privilege, note that we are extremely committed in our office to ensuring continuity and a smooth transition to the next administration. I recognize this will be our final budget hearing of the Hogan administration before this committee, and that is a priority for us to ensure that we leave the office from a fiscal, from a management, and from a logistics and support standpoint in a strong place to welcome the incoming administration. With that, I'm happy to take your questions.
Okay. I don't see any questions. I just had one. Do we have a lot of vacant positions, Amelia?
Senator King, I would answer that in the negative. We do not have a lot of vacant positions, but I will turn it over to my colleague, our Director of the Governor's Office of Financial Administration, Mona Vaidya, to provide some details.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Senator King, your question is regarding specifically the governor's office. We, at the current time, have about 6 vacancies, which we have several positions that we will be filling shortly. Okay. And I would say within the month of March.
Oh, okay. No other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Happy Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Okay, next we have the University System of Maryland office. Sarah Baker is our analyst.
It just froze on me.
Sarah, are you there?
You're
You're
Are you
there.
there?
Yeah.
Okay. Everything's freezing, going in and out all of a sudden.
Oh,
Okay, so hopefully it's better. Let me just pull up my screen for you. Okay, I'm going to start with Exhibit 1, which
Okay.
shows the transfer students. In fall 2021, transfer students comprise 52.4% of new undergraduates at USM, and this is down from 56.4% the previous fall. And as you can see, other transfers, which do include those from out of state, comprise 62% of USM transfer students. Colleges account for 32%. So Exhibit 2 breaks down enrollment trends by the community college and other transfers. USM enrolled the highest number of transfers at almost 38,500 in 2019. However, since then, enrollment has declined about 10.6% or over about 4,000 students. And most of this declined in 2021 when the enrollment fell about 3,800 students. And this mainly is due to the out-of-state transfers, which may reflect students preferring. Of concern is the continued decline of community college transfers, in which declined for a third year in 2021. Decline like the continued enrollment decline at the community colleges. Exhibit 3 shows where, as you can see, about
you're kind of breaking up on us here.
81% of the transfer role in one of the 4 institutions. Okay, let me try something. By opening that, maybe that'll help a little bit. Is that a little bit?
I'll talk a little more.
Okay. So the 81% of the transfers go to one of 4 of the USM's institutions, GC, Towson, College Park, or UMBC. And we asked the chancellor to comment on efforts to increase the number of transfers from community colleges, including efforts to improve pathways to USM institutions. I just brought up Exhibit 4, and this is enrollment at USM's regional higher education centers. And in 21, enrollment at the RHEX increased 12.1%. And this was driven by a 13% increase in enrollment at Shady Grove. And that is due to UMB's medical cannabis program. Despite that growth, Shady Grove is still almost 12% below that of 2015. Exhibit 5 shows the proposed budget. And after adjusting the 22 working appropriation and 23 allowance, state funds increased 13.9% or 2.8 million when we exclude the PAYGO. General funds are up of 3.7 million, which is slightly offset by about $800,000 decline in HEF. Total funds you'll see decreased by 145.4 million, but this reflects a decrease of 148 million of PAYGO funds. When you exclude the PAYGO funds, total funds increased 2.8 million. Increases in state funds include 1.5 million to restore the 21 BPW cut, 1 million related in general salary increases, and over 200,000 for the opening of the new facility in Southern Maryland. I just wanted to note that funding for the RHEX at Hagerstown and Southern Maryland are included in the system's budget office. And in general, they comprise about a quarter of their general fund budget. Now, as some of you may recall, a recommendation stemming from the 2019 JCR regarding financial viability of Shady Grove was the creation of separate budget code for Shady Grove for the 23 budget cycle. So I'm showing, this is their new budget, is shown here in Exhibit 6. The adjusted 23 state funds increased 10.6% or 2.4 million. But due to the budget being created during the fiscal 22 year cycle, statewide salary enhancements in 22 are budgeted within the system office. So the increase is a little bit overstated in 23. Additionally, their state fund also includes 1.8 million to restore the BPW cut reduction. And my recommendation is to do the USM overview for system-wide recommendations. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah Baker. Good job.
Thank you.
Dr. Perman, you've got the whole team on there.
I always like to have the whole team around me. Thank you, Senator King. Members of the subcommittee, we're delighted to be back and testifying on the system office's FY23 operating budget. And as you noted, Madam Chair, I'm honored to be joined by our Board of Regents Chair, sitting to my right, Ms. Linda Gooden, as well as USM Vice Chancellors, Dr. Joe Boffman, Ellen Herbst, Patrick Hogan. Let me, of course, start by thanking you for your continued support of the university system and that office, our office that manages its operations. And I also want to add my thanks to Ms. Baker for her typical excellent analysis. Let me give you one example up front of our management, particularly in the form of our financial stewardship. This is hot off the press news that I want to share with the committee. At a bond auction just yesterday, we sold $102.9 million worth of Series A bonds with more than $12 million of premium, money that will go towards supporting academic and auxiliary projects system-wide. We also refinanced about $24 million in previously issued bonds. The refinancing saves us over $500,000 over the next 4 years, lowering the debt service payments for our institutions. This auction performance, even better than we expected, was made possible by our incredibly strong bond ratings, AA1 and AA+. These bond ratings bring tangible financial benefits to the system and therefore to our students and to our fellow Maryland taxpayers. I say sincerely, I think they're a testament to our exceptional financial management. That's the work we do at the system office, which, as you're aware, is one of the leanest in the country. And I have data for you in my full report. Less than 0.5% of the entire system budget goes to administrative costs at the system office. Our office is the third most efficient out of those at 29 comparable university systems across the country. And that's by design. That's in keeping with legislation that governs the USM, that governance drawn up at our founding in 1988. It's intended to ensure that state money granted to the system passes through to the universities themselves. And I would like to say a little more about that a few minutes from now, but I'd first like to respond to the issue raised by the analyst. I've been asked to comment on efforts to increase the students transferring from community colleges into the USM, including efforts to improve pathways from two-year colleges to our institutions. I know you're well aware that the number of transfer students we enroll depends on several factors. The first, of course, being the number of students who enroll at a community college in the first place. Maryland's community college enrollment has dropped in recent years, as was noted. And that's at least partially attributable to COVID. Students experienced academic loss, financial hardship, challenges to their mental and emotional health. And all of this, yes, took a toll on their college-going plans. Certainly, It's in the best interests of the system, the USM, and of Maryland higher education writ large to work on rebuilding our robust two-year college enrollment. The second factor influencing our transfer numbers is the ease with which college credits earned at a community college can be transferred to one of the system institutions. And as you know, responsibility for maintaining and improving the statewide transfer platform has fallen to the USM office. We've recently made enormous progress on the ArtSys platform, which has undergone an update and expansion for 35 participating USM and non-USM institutions. The platform was improved in two important ways. First, as courses are deemed compatible, ArtSys automatically updates the system. It's no longer a time-consuming manual process for university staff. And more importantly, the student experience is much better. The platform allows students to explore many transfer pathways at once, save their data in their searches, upload their transcripts, and schedule virtual or face-to-face meetings with advisors. The new ArtSys will be online at all participating institutions by this April. Staff training will be complete by May. Certainly, ongoing support for ArtSys and programmatic support for students are necessary to keep improving our transfer capabilities. The third factor affecting transfer enrollment is course equivalency, the degree to which community college courses are aligned with those of the USM, and consequently the number of courses we accept for transfer. In consultation with MHEC, we joined Morgan State, St. Mary's, MICUA, and the Maryland Association of Community Colleges to revise COMA in a way that meets the requirements of the Transfer with Success Act, specifically the requirements governing the reporting of credit denial. The revisions we've made will mean more community college courses will be accepted for transfer at the USM and other four-year institutions. The fourth factor affecting transfers is the health and expansiveness of articulation agreements that allow community college students to transfer seamlessly into a degree program at one of our institutions. We have over 850 of these articulation agreements, and ArtSys will make it clear to students exactly what these curricular pathways look like and the most efficient ways to move from their community college program to a four-year degree of their choice at the system. The fifth and final factor affecting transfers is the existence of full articulation pathways buttressed by wraparound support for students. These pathways provide more than guidance on which courses to take without credit waste or duplication. They serve students with academic and career advising, peer support, internships, mentoring. And this model is being pioneered by the universities at Shady Grove. And the support services USG offers are made available to students before they ever get there, before they ever transfer to the center. It's a model we hope to adopt and replicate across the system. Now, in closing, I do want to briefly, Madam Chair, revisit my earlier point on the leanness of the USM office, because it's pertinent to all of this. It's in the context of your question about improving our community college transfer numbers. It's obviously a terribly important issue, but in my opinion, you don't fix a problem like declining transfer numbers by starting at the community college level. You start fixing it long before that. You fix it in grade school and middle school, not at 18, 19, 20 years old. We're looking at things too much in segments. And if we want to take a systemic approach to fixing this access problem, this preparation problem, which shows us as declining enrollment, then I would say we need some money at the USM office. I understand this isn't the way our shop has operated in the past. I understand why the funds we get are almost exclusively pass-through dollars. I get it. If you don't want a big bureaucracy, our funding structure makes sense. But I would humbly say and submit to you that it also stops us from fixing some vitally important things like enrollment at institutions. The community colleges are institutions that have suffered significant declines because it stops us from creating new things like system-wide programs. And I know I beat on this all the time, that strengthen the pipeline from elementary school to middle school to high school to community college to the USM. It's got to be all the way back there and seamless. With money, yes, we can build a pipeline, we can incentivize it, instead of asking our presidents to somehow stand up these programs on their own. Now, I'm in no way suggesting a diversion of money from our universities. All that would do is harm the institutions we're trying to help. I'm simply suggesting the nesting of some discretionary dollars at the system office to allow the chancellor and his staff to help make meaningful change and to bring accountability for the change. It's a new way of doing business. Personally, I think it's the smarter way, but our ability to intervene and improve some systemic challenges would be enabled. And personally, I'd like the chance to do it. Thank you, Madam Chair. I know I went over my time and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Perman. Senator Alfred.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Perman, thank you so much. We feel your enthusiasm for your work. And thank you to you and your team, particularly on this transfer business. And thank you for the USM for taking the lead on this issue and coordinating the 35 universities to date. I hear you on the need to support that work with operating funding, and hopefully we will be able to pass that bill this year to do just that. But I just want to take a moment, kind of without anybody else leading, USM stood up and I greatly appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're grateful for your help.
Senator Quarterman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, everyone from USM. We sincerely appreciate the presence USM has in downtown Hagerstown. So continued appreciation on that. I do want to touch on two things here. When you talk about the transferring, I do agree with what you said, Dr. Perlman, as far as it begins earlier than just the community college. And to that point, I would ask, and I don't expect an answer today, maybe we could work, offline, of the presence that USMH has, particularly in our Washington County school system. Because I think you do bring up a very good point. I know we have a great collaboration with our Hagerstown Community College and with Dr. Klauber and Mark Halsey at the system in Hagerstown. But I do agree with your point as far as it needs to start before then. So I would be interested in what is being done in our local school system to attract those individuals and those kids there. The second
I would, Senator, if I may interrupt, I would love the opportunity to have that conversation.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. The second thing is when we talk about the some of the enrollment in the programs that are offered. As you know, we have the physician assistance program that has been overwhelmingly popular. I've talked to Dr. Nawalchek at Frostburg multiple times, and I understand there's some accreditation hoops and challenges to go through. But again, I'm on the outside looking in, and you guys know the system way better than I do, obviously. But when I see that we have a program that has 24 students and has 1,000 applicants, my immediate reaction is, how do we get more? How do we get more classes? Because I think we have the talent, we have the students that want to partake in these classes. It's just we're not able to expand it at a pace I think that the public would deem feasible.
Senator, again, thank you. A nice moment I had 3 or 4 years ago was helping to cut the ribbon on the PA program.
Yes, I was there. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, and at Hagerstown. And that's a paradox into it, isn't it? We desperately need physicians' assistants. There are plenty of people who want to enroll, and the programs are small.
Right.
And a lot of the challenge there, you mentioned accreditation. A lot of the challenge there is the PA regulator, the accrediting body, which hopefully we can work with better to meet the workforce needs. But I think that's a large part of the inhibition toward growing the program. And again, that's something we should talk about more.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir. Thank you again for your commitment to Hagerstown. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Perman, as always. Is there anyone else on your panel there that would like to say anything?
Chair Gooden.
Well, hello, Senator King. It's good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
And I guess the only thing that I'd like to add is, you know, being chair of the board, we get a firsthand perspective on the leadership and the management. And I'd really like to commend the chancellor and the leadership team for their fiscal responsibility through this pandemic. I mean, they found innovative ways to really build systemness into the system. And so we were able to do things we've never done before in terms of sharing across the universities. And there's a whole tone and tenor that didn't exist just a few years ago. So anything that, that we can do collectively to support the system and to support the growth and the support bringing enrollment up to a new level are the things that we're focused on. So again, thank you for letting me sit in this morning.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Perman, not to give you a big head or anything, but I think that you are the right person at the right time to be there in that position. And I'm just happy that you're there.
Thank you, Senator. That's very kind of you.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Okay, happy Friday afternoon. Next on our agenda, we have the Board of Public Works. Patrick Frank is the analyst.
Okay, I'm trying to share and it says that I'm disabled from sharing my screen. Hold on. All right. It still says that I am disabled from sharing.
Well, if you can't share, then I know the committee has the paperwork in front.
Okay, now it just came up.
Okay,
So
good.
here we go. Thank you. All right, you should be able to see the screen. And okay, first is this, our first graph is always how the budget is changing. Yes, you can see there are increases in recent years, and that has to do mostly with the grants that the department, or that flow through the Board of Public Works. I'll move on to contingent fund activity quickly. In 21, there was $657,000 given to the contingent fund. It used $250,000 for a veterans, Korean War Veterans Memorial Foundation, and the rest of $327,000 supported the erroneous conviction incarceration grants, and $80,000 was returned at the end of the year. There are 3 deficiencies in this budget for 2022. 2 of them, the 1.3 million and 300,000 there, are with erroneous conviction grants that were approved by the Board of Public Works. They need the money. So there's a deficiency for that. There's also $90,000 for the Historic Annapolis for the Shaw House. They have taken that over, the operation and maintenance of that building now from the Department of General Services. And so the state is giving them a subsidy to help run that. I'll quickly go over spending. The message from this pie chart is that 90% of the spending is grants that flow through the Board of Public Works, and 10% of the spending is the administration office and the wetlands administration. So this is most of this money goes to other people.
Patrick, can I ask you one question before you go any further? Back to the Shaw House. Isn't that where some of our DLS offices are going to be housed for the next couple of years?
Yes, I believe what'll happen is the Historic Annapolis will then lease it to the Department of Legislative Services. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Correct, yes. The grants, I'll just go over. The two things are going on here. One is some of the grants were trimmed during the pandemic and they're getting some increases now. That is the Zoo, Historic Annapolis, and the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. But interestingly, there is one new grant for $1.8 million. It's the Justice Thurgwood Marshall Center. And this is the old elementary school that the late Supreme Court Justice went to. And it's called Public School 103. It is applying to become a national park. And what I mentioned here, there are 4 criteria that the National Park Service has for if you have to qualify. What I think is most interesting is the second one, and that it has to represent a resource that is not adequately represented. And I have to say that I've been to a number of national parks, but not all of them, but this does seem different than from a lot of the national parks and historical sites that I've been to. We'll move on to the zoo now. The attendance trends are right here. The red are the warmer months, the blue are the colder months. And you can, as you might have expected, closing the zoo in the spring of 2020, when its peak attendance had quite an effect on attendance for that year. The black line here is the long-term trend. I calculated that from 2010 to 2019, on average, after you adjust for the cyclical nature of the attendance, the attendance grew by about 70 people every month over that period. And the question moving forward is, can the zoo bounce back? Clearly, there's been a bounce back in 2021, but can it bounce back to get back to that line? Revenues are interesting as well. This is a chart that shows over the last 8 years what's going on with the revenues. And as you can see, there was steady growth. Once again, 2020 was a tough year for the zoo with revenues as attendance was down. What I thought was interesting is if you look at this membership dues, that actually held up pretty well with only a 15% decline. But of course, the other revenues that were visitor and basically event-based revenue that you get when people are at the zoo, that really was where the biggest hit was taken. Another major revenue source for the zoo is the grants that it gets, including this one in this budget. But other, the State Department of Education, Baltimore City, and Howard County also provide some money for the zoo to help it out. And I guess, like I said, the question with the zoo is how are they going to moving forward out of the pandemic? What are they going to be doing? The second and final issue that has to do with the erroneous convictions, the grants that we give. This exhibit over here shows how much has been awarded in grants and how many grantees there have been. There is some legislation that was enacted this last year, and what it did is it'll allow people that had received prior grants that are below the level that we're getting them now, they can get the rest of that grant back. So if your grant was only 75% of what current standards are, you can get that other 25%. So some of these grants are those individuals. There are 2 recommendations in this analysis. The first is the annual language for the zoo, which they comply, and that's the information that I have in this analysis basically comes from this narrative here. The second is it is an interesting project, this Justice Thurgwood Marshall Center, and so what we're asking is an update in December about how things are going with their planning for the National Park Service, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Good job. Any questions from the committee? Okay, we have agency representatives here today. We have the Honorable John Gontram, the Executive Secretary of the Board of Public Works. We have Mr. Robert Clark, President and CEO of Historic Annapolis. Mr. J. Kirby Fowler, Jr., President and CEO of the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore. Ms. Diane Hutchins, Vice President of Government Relations for the Maryland Zoo. Dr. Alvin Hathaway, President and CEO, Justice Thurgood Marshall Center. Mr. Wes Hines, Executive Director, Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. Mr. Raymond Morris, Mayor of Cumberland. And Mr. Bob Flanagan, Mayor of Frostburg. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Gontram, do you want to start?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you so very much, Chair King, Senator Elfreth, Senator Quarterman. Thank you so much for your time this morning. John Gontram, I am Executive Secretary of the Board of Public Works. Maybe honorable. I don't know. I've got to think about that one. I'll be very brief out of respect for the committee's time. I want to start by thanking Mr. Frank for his terrific analysis this year again of the board's proposed operating budget. As you said, Madam Chair, we do have representatives from the board's 4 named operating budget grantees, the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore, Historic Annapolis, the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, and new this year, the Justice Thurgood Marshall Center, available to talk about their organizations and projects. Conceptually, again, this year, the board's budget can be separated into 2 categories: the pass-through funds, those named operating budget grants, the board's contingent fund, and grants to erroneously incarcerated individuals. Collectively, those pass-through funds comprise 90% of the board's proposed operating budget for FY23. The remaining 10% goes to fund the Board of Public Works' operations. Our funding for the proposed FY23 operating budget is basically level from last year. With that, I'll stop, and Madam Chair, at the appropriate time, I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, do we have any questions from any of our members? I don't think so. Is there anyone else on this panel that would like to say a few words? Diane, do you want to? Okay, if we could just keep the comments to not real long so that everybody has a chance to say something, that would be great. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. For the record, Diane Hutchins, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore. Our President and CEO, Mr. Kirby Fowler, extends his regrets for his inability to attend today. I'd first like to say thank you to the Hogan administration, to Mr. John Gontram for his partnership with the zoo, and to the subcommittee for its past and hopefully its current support of the zoo. And Mr. Patrick Frank for his very thorough and direct analysis. To deal with his questions, the zoo has developed plans for activities over the course of this year that we think will appeal to a large variety of people. And we think that will help us bring in attendees. We also know that while attendance for us only means on grounds, we do also do virtual programming, some of which you will hear about at the SAI hearing. But since this week is Healthcare Heroes Week, we'd like to do the zoo would like to do a particular shout out to the nurses at 3 different hospitals. The Samuelson Pediatric Hospital at Sinai Hospital, the University of Maryland Children's Hospital, and the Johns Hopkins Children's Center. The nurses there make our pediatric outreach program possible. And we'd like to say thank you to them for letting us do this. And we will be bringing in 3,000 plus folks for, as you can tell from our written comments, for the Association of Zoos and Aquariums National Conference in August. Thank you very much. We ask for your support.
Thank you so much. Mr. Clark, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is, or good afternoon, I guess I should say. My name is Robert Clark. I'm the President and CEO of Historic Annapolis. And I'd like to thank you, Chair King, and Senator Elfreth, and Senator Quarterman, and Senator Zucker, as well as the Board of Public Works and John Gontram, for your consideration and support of our request, and for all the years previously for your support. I am in favor and very grateful for the funding being put forward for Historic Annapolis. This critical grant funding provides approximately 1/3 of our general operating revenue to help HA interpret and manage the 12 state-owned properties under our care. It's an honor for Historic Annapolis to partner with the state. The support that is provided by the Board of Public Works is critical to our activity to represent the state and steward these historic sites and make them available to the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Michelle Rutkowski.
Madam Chair, she is unable to attend today as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Alvin Hathaway, welcome.
Welcome. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and subcommittee members, and thank you for the amazing analysis and for John for his work. We are excited. You must realize that Justice Thurgood Marshall should be to Baltimore as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is to Atlanta. His work as architect of the civil rights movement is absolutely phenomenal, and we have the opportunity for a building that was designed by George Fredericks in 1877. George Fredericks designed Baltimore City College High School. He designed Baltimore City Hall. He designed the Howard P. Rawlins Conservatory at Drill Park, and he designed the state office, the Capitol, as well as Lawyer Mall. So we're able to preserve this amazing facility that this outstanding designer developed. And then in 1914, here comes Justice Thurgood Marshall to go to school. He goes to school there. Legend will have it that when he would misbehave, his teachers would send him to the lower level to have to read the Constitution. So we have this opportunity to make this not only a active center, and I do want to point out to you that we have relationships with University of Maryland College Park, where the Judge Alexander Williams Center will be there. We have relationships with the University of Maryland Baltimore Medical School. They'll have their mini medical school program will be there. And we also have a relationship with BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport, where they're going to do Project Takeoff. But the amazing thing is that my dear beloved lost colleague, Congressman Elijah Cummings, in May 2019, introduced legislation to have a study to make this a asset of the National Park Service. I followed through. He was my classmate from 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. So I followed through. And we are now on the precipice of legislation that will be introduced by Congressman Mfume, Senator Cardin, and Senator Van Hollen to make this an asset of the National Park Service. So that Baltimore City now will have two assets, Fort McHenry and PS 103. And so I do thank the state. I do thank the Governor Hogan administration for investing in this vision. It will be a tremendous asset to our city and to our state.
Thank you very much. Senator Elfreth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, this is maybe it's Friday, everybody's in a very good mood, but Dr. Hathaway, I just want to thank you for your work. I've spoken with National Park Service. They're ecstatic for this opportunity, and it's just going to be a wonderful asset in Baltimore City. And Mr. Clark, I just want to publicly thank you for not only stewarding the Shaw House, but also very graciously ensuring that our DLS staff will have a partial home there, as well as we have the transition moving forward. I just want to thank you for your graciousness there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wes Hines from the Maryland Scenic Railroad.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, committee, and John Gontram. It's nice to start putting faces with names, as I've recently become a resident of the state of Maryland and love it here.
Welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to just take a moment to say thank you for the continued support that this body has provided to the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, and to give you kind of a quick overview of what the last 8 months has brought to Western Maryland as a community, not just the railroad. The railroad, I envision it as a tool. It is part of our strategy to make sure that we utilize the railroad to further economic development and also to underpin the tourism that takes place in Western Maryland. Recently, we have completed the steam locomotive 1309, and I know that this body also is generously provided for that. This year, starting in June, I came aboard, pardon the pun, on the 8th, and between that date and December 31st, the team that we have assembled here reconstituted and really rebranded the railroad, we have managed to finish the year with the greatest revenue the railroad has experienced in its 35 years. We almost bested the best year in ridership. And we did that by engaging the community. And what we did was we looked at the demographics of this area and wanted to make sure that we could make ourselves a touchstone to the community, because once you have the community involved in the organization, as we are a nonprofit, it will allow them to support us in a more proactive way. So we did some ice cream trains, we did pumpkin trains, and it sounds very simple, and it is. But the best part about it is we brought 9,000 riders to the railroad that had never existed before by proper pricing and making it affordable for the area so that people could bring their families not once, not twice, but 3 or 4 times throughout the year. The other thing that the team did was we put together a very robust holiday program based on the Polar Express, which is owned by Warner Brothers. And we did Polar Express and grew it from 2019's number, which was about 9,000 passengers, to 25,722 passengers this year. We also have included, I have the Honorable Mayor Bob Flanagan from Frostburg with me here at my house. We brought the railroad up to Frostburg and did a lot of programs where we ran the ice cream trains and Polar Express out of Frostburg, with the intention being not to bolster the railroad, but to bolster the businesses in downtown Frostburg. And it was a pleasure to go business to business, and then reflections from Mayor Bob, where the business owners said, wow, we had no idea that we would get this shot in the arm at Christmas. And, you know, COVID-19 had obviously made such a large impact on the area. So that's what the team at Western Maryland Scenic is doing. It can't just be about trains. It has to be about telling the history and providing a classy experience, if you will, for the outsiders coming in to experience tourism in Western Maryland, but then capping it all with what we can do for the region and the citizens of Western Maryland. So that's what we're about. And that's what we're doing. And thank you for your support. And that's all I've got, unless you've got some questions for me.
Well, I've got a 9-year-old granddaughter that is dying to go on a train. And
we got one.
I will get her up there this spring somehow.
We're going to do spring fling. She can decorate a eco-friendly biodegradable flower pot.
There you go.
You can either take it home with you, or she can plant it at Helmstedter's Curve. And we're going to make a little plot, and it'll be for the kids of 2022, and they can plant seeds, and we'll try to see if we can grow some flowers out there and
nice.
Try to do creative things that build experiences with grandchildren and kids and make them want to stay here. Mentioning kids real quick, we also have rolled out an education program within our staff so that we can try to maintain quality people within our staff. And we have a young man that is now attending school, and the railroad is furnishing that education for him, because we want to be able to make sure that we keep our families coming back for more and staying in the area.
Good. Mr. Flanagan, do you want to say anything?
No, Chairman King, it's very good to see you this afternoon, and
nice to see you again.
Through there in Annapolis. Miss not coming down to be with you in person.
Next year,
because we like to come down and spend a little extra time and visit downtown Annapolis and the area and so on and so forth. So again, it's be your turn to come up. We have tickets waiting for you, and anyone on the committee that would like to partake, just reach out to us, okay?
Well, I hold a special soft spot in my heart for Frostburg. I had a daughter that went there to school and had wonderful experience. So it's a good area.
She's still in South Carolina?
Yes.
Okay. We'll tell her we said hello, okay?
Okay.
You take care.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Morris, Mayor of Cumberland. Not here.
That's all you get today.
That's all we
got. A mayor, you got a mayor, and you got a director. You're good.
Can't get any better. Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Mr. Zucker has joined us. Senator Zucker, happy to have you back. Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Same to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, next on our agenda, we have the MHEC Student Financial Assistance. Ian Klein is our analyst. You want to go, Ian?
All right, it should be on your screen now.
Yes.
Perfect. The first item that we're going to be discussing involves Fafsa filing. Exhibit 2 on page 8 compares Maryland's Fafsa completion rate to our competitor states. As shown, just under 34%, as is shown at just under 34%, Maryland compares favorably to 6 states, while the number of Maryland students who have completed a Fafsa is just over 4% lower than the 2019-2020 academic year, which would be the pre-pandemic year. As can be seen in the exhibit, all competitor states, with the exception of Virginia, have experienced a decline in Fafsa submission relative to the same time during the 2019-2020 cycle. Secretary should comment on what steps are being taken to promote and encourage Fafsa filing and how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted Fafsa filing in Maryland. Secretary should also comment on the findings from the Federal Student Aid Conference concerning the transition to the Student Aid Index and how these findings would impact financial aid in Maryland and MD caps. Exhibit 3 on page 9 shows the total number of Fafsa filed in the state. Starting with the 2017-2018 cycle, the numbers exceeded 150,000, which can be attributed to the moving up the filing deadline 3 months to October and using prior tax year information to determine eligibility. However, there's been a steady decline beginning with the 2017-2018 cycle. It should be noted that the 2022-2023 numbers are as of January, and students have until March 1st to file their FAFSAs to apply for state aid. Turning to guaranteed access grants, which cover 100% of financial need for the lowest income students in the state. On page 11, Exhibit 4 shows the number of GA awards. In 2021, GA awards increased to its highest total ever of 3,090. Overall, since 2015, the number of initial awards has grown 166% from 525 in 2015 to 1,397 in 2021. Exhibit 5 on page 12 shows that 95% of those receiving a GA grant in fiscal 2021 had an expected family contribution lower than $3,850. The other awards were older awards that were moving through the system. Moving to educational assistance grants, which cover 40% of the need of a four-year institution and 60% of the need at community colleges. On page 13, Exhibit 6 summarizes the information on these grants. Again, the effects of the early FAFSA filing can be seen with the number of on-time applications increasing in 2018 and 2019. The number of EA awards increased 2% from fiscal 2019 to 2020, growing from 52.2 million to 53.4 million. You'll note the number on the wait list has also declined over 62% in 2020, which reflected a change in the EFC cutoff to the wait list to reflect the Pell Index. For 2021, that number was $6,345. Exhibit 17 on page 15 shows that 92% of the EA awards go to students with an EFC below $3,850. The Secretary should comment on how MHEC determines the appropriate allocation of GA and EA awards, focusing on how MHEC ensures that the neediest students are provided the greatest award, while striving to maximize the number of awards provided to the eligible applicant pool. Turning to the budget on page 16, Exhibit 8 shows spending by type of aid. Of the $167.7 million provided in fiscal 2023, 74% goes to need-based aid, 12% to career-based aid, 8% to legislative scholarships, and 3% each to the unique population and loan assistance repayment programs. Exhibit 9 on page 17 shows the number of award recipients and average award amount by program. Overall, MHEC expects the total number of recipients to increase by nearly 17% in 2023, which is mainly due to an increase in EA awards, Promise scholarships, 2+2 transfer scholarships, and Teaching Fellows Award recipients. The proposed budget is shown on Exhibit 10 on page 18. The budget has been adjusted in fiscal 2022 to reflect a deficiency appropriation of $1.1 million for the Conroy Memorial Scholarship. EA award funding increases by $11.9 million in 2023. As a result of Chapter 59 of 2021, 2 new programs are funded this year, including the Police Officer Scholarship Program and the Police Officer Loan Assistance Repayment Program. Chapter 36 of 2021 mandated an increase in spending for the Teaching Fellows for Maryland Scholarship. And an additional new loan assistance repayment program for nurses and nursing assistants is also included in the 2023 allowance. In total, funding increases from the 2022 adjusted budget by $32.5 million in the 2023 allowance. Exhibit 11 on page 19 shows the balance of the Need-Based Student Financial Assistance Fund. This fund was set up to receive unused scholarship funds that could be used in future years. Currently, MHEC anticipates funding of $4.4 million being allocated out to several scholarship programs, leaving a balance of $4.2 million by the conclusion of fiscal 2022. Moving to the issues, which begin on page 20. The first issue involves the credit completion requirement for financial aid awards. The College Affordability Act of 2016 required students who are recipients of EEA awards, including the EA grant, GA grant, and campus-based educational assistant grant, to meet certain credit completion requirements, and if they did not, their scholarship could be prorated or eliminated. The intent of this legislation was to encourage students who received an EEA award to graduate on time, which would mean 15 credits per semester or 30 credits per year. Exhibit 12 on page 21 shows the outcome of the credit completion requirement for the 2019-2020 credit roster. 34% attained at least 30 credits and were eligible to maintain the full award amount. 24% attained at least 24 credits, but less than 30, and were eligible to receive a prorated award, which is 20% less than the full award amount. While the plurality, 42%, did not attain the 24 credits needed and lost their EEA award. Exhibit 13 on page 22 shows the credit completion outcomes for the 2017 to 2018 credit cycle through the 2019-2020 credit cycle. As can be seen in the exhibit, the proportion of students who failed to achieve 30 credits has grown over time. Conversely, the percentage of students who attained at least 30 credits has shrunk. Exhibit 14 on page 23 shows how the credit completion requirement impacted the different higher education segments for the 2019-2020 credit roster. As can be seen in the exhibit, the private four-year institutions had the greatest percentage of their student population attain at least 30 credits. However, the community college level, 2/3 of that segment fell below the 24 credit amount. Exhibit 15 on page 25 documents the segment breakdown over the 3 years worth of data by the percentage that attained fewer than 24 credits. As is shown in the exhibit, the private four-year institutions have remained fairly level, with roughly 17% failing to hit the 24 credit threshold. The proportion of the public four-year student population has grown by nearly 10 percentage points, while the community college student population has for the past 2 cycles failed to achieve at least 24 credits at a rate of 2 out of 3 students. Secretary should comment how students are informed that beginning in their 3rd academic year, they must complete at least 30 credits in their prior academic year to retain the full EEA award, and how those students are notified if they fail to meet program requirements, as well as what actions are being taken to specifically address the community college student population, given the large percentage of that segment that have lost their EEA awards, and how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted students' abilities to take a full academic course load. We also asked the executive director of MAC to answer those same questions. The second issue begins on page 25 and involves the Promise Scholarship Program. Page 25 summarizes the changes that have recently gone into effect for the program, including the elimination of the service obligation and altering of certain eligibility requirements. Exhibit 16 on page 26 shows that of the 23,233 applicants, 23% qualified for the scholarship, while the remaining applicants' tuition and fees were covered by their Pell Grant and were not eligible to receive the award. Exhibit 17 on page 27 shows the distribution by college. The low number of awards at BCCC and Garrett could partly be due to these colleges offering local Promise awards. Exhibit 18 on page 28 shows the distribution by EFC, and since this is a last dollar award, most of the awards are given to those in higher EFC categories. Secretary should comment on the reasons why the Promise program has not been able to expend the full amount allocated for the program in any award year to date, and the actions that could be taken to spur interest in the program. Secretary should also comment on the declining number of community college students in the state, despite financial aid programs such as the Maryland Community College Promise Scholarship, that are designed to make the financial obligation required to attend a higher education institution, particularly community colleges, as financially manageable as possible for the student. The next issue involves the Next Generation Scholar Program, which begins on page 29. Next Generation Scholars Program expanded the existing college readiness outreach program and provides state funding supporting students in high poverty school systems, enabling those who meet certain criteria to pre-qualify for the GA grant. The 2020-2021 academic year was the first year of a cohort with grade 12 students, with 966 seniors graduating from the program. Of that total, 402 NGS students were accepted to college, and of that total, 175 applied for a GA scholarship, with 97 students being awarded the grant. The ULS asked the Secretary to comment on how MHEC pre-qualifies students for the GA grant program when they participate in the NGS program. The last issue concerns the GA cliff. Although students who meet the requirements for a GA grant are guaranteed funding, if the family's income increases above the designated total, even if by only $1, the student may become ineligible to receive their GA award. This is known as the GA cliff. Exhibit 19 on page 30 documents the impact that the GA cliff has had on students from fiscal 2019 through 2021. The Financial Aid Advisory Committee of MHEC has been working on potential solutions to address the GA cliff, which are summarized on page 31. The Secretary should comment on the persistence rates for those students who lost their GA award due to the GA cliff, as well as how many students were successful in receiving an EA award the following award cycle after losing their GA award to the GA cliff, as well as the application process that a student must go through to receive an EA award. The DLS recommended actions are found on page 32. The first recommended action is for MHEC to submit a report on the impact of the credit completion requirement. And the second report is requested on the Next Generation Scholars Post-Secondary Outcomes. I will also note that in Appendix 2 on page 36, there is a summary of the recent audit findings for MHEC. This audit found 5 repeat findings, with 4 of those concerning financial assistance. The recommended actions associated with these findings will be discussed in the MHEC administration analysis. And with that, I conclude my presentation and would be happy to answer questions.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Okay, Dr. Fielder.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to first thank Senator King, his chair, and the other senators of the subcommittee for the tremendous support that we've received in higher education through the years. Again, this year, looking at the fact that the innovation, the catalyst for change in the state is related to higher education. So as we're able to help those students move forward. Just real quick couple highlights. During the last 7 years, $1.1 billion worth of scholarships and awards have gone through MHEC to over 420,000 students. And that's just an extraordinary number. And our staff is so focused on the legacy that they're creating to help so many families. In any given year, over 90,000 applications come in. So the one thing about the pandemic that you saw in higher education was the requirement for innovation, as institutions immediately had to pivot from in-person to online. Well, so did we. So did our OSFA delivery system. So we had to switch over from the in-person meetings and going out and doing outreach in high schools with counselors to get the word about scholarships. We had to go online, and we implemented an electronic funding mechanism so that all the applications for the first time could be submitted electronically. The student could see their steps of their application as they looked at it real time. And that's a significant change for us in terms of, think of the 90,000 pages of tax returns and so forth that you had to keep track of. One of the other elements of switching to the online was those meetings we moved through. Donna Thomas as our executive director of OSFA did a great job in converting to do virtual meetings and over 500 family meetings a week for a while in order to keep up with what was necessary. So when I think about, what we have been able to accomplish in the last 2 years and think about some of the things that still need to be worked on, I have Jeff Newman, who's my assistant secretary, Aubrey Bashum, who's the director of finance administration, and then Donna Thomas, who will directly answer questions to whatever level of minutia you want to get into. One of the highlights that Mr. Klein did was to talk about the GA grant being up 15.4% to the highest level ever. We start looking at the enrollment declines that the community colleges have continued for 10 years now. And this pandemic has hit them even harder because the community college students are made up of those that have the need to take only part-time credits. Most of our scholarship programs are aimed at full-time credit bearing. So you have part-time students and I wouldn't say at risk economically, but those that are the most vulnerable to economic change. So you start to see that the impact has been magnified most on our community college with a 10% decrease in enrollment. Those things will slowly start to change, but we again are involved in trying to support as much as we can. We even had a new 4-year institution get approved, started in Hagerstown, the Collegium. So there's been a lot of good news, but it's been centered on being able to deliver in a different manner. So with that, I'll turn it over to Donna Thomas. I believe she's on the screen now. Donna?
Yes, thank you, Secretary Fielder. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Donna Thomas. I am Director for the Office of Student Financial Assistance. Before I go into providing responses to the analysis, I would just like to take a moment to share the following. During the last application cycle, the Office of Student Financial Assistance received approximately 100,000 documents from applicants applying for our various state financial aid programs. In one of our largest need-based aid programs, known as the Guaranteed Access Grant, approximately 34,000 documents were submitted by applicants. Each of those documents are reviewed by an OSFA staff member to determine the student's eligibility. With approximately 34,000 documents received, OSFA was still able to perform awarding by May 1st in the Guaranteed Access Grant Program and the Educational Assistance Grant Program. OSFA remains committed to providing access, streamlining processes, and removing barriers for students to apply for state financial aid. How may you ask? In 2021, OSFA implemented the electronic file upload tool, allowing applicants to submit their documents online through MDCAPS, which is our online financial aid management system. Applicants immediately received confirmation that their document was received. This avoided students from having to submit information by mail or email and has drastically reduced the number of emails that we currently receive. Also in 2021, as the Secretary spoke to just a few moments ago, we implemented virtual appointments. Customers can schedule an appointment online with a financial aid specialist, and we continue to provide that service even though we have returned to the office full-time. In the first week alone, we serviced more than 500 individuals in those virtual appointments. Beginning next week, we are further expanding virtual appointments to now offer them after 5 o'clock p.m. This will allow those individuals who are not able to contact our office during normal business hours to still be able to speak with a financial aid administrator to discuss their state financial aid as we move into our peak season. Additionally, beginning with the 22-23 academic year, we implemented a secondary deadline in the Guaranteed Access Grant Program. Any applicant that fails to submit documentation by the priority date of April 1 now has until May 15th to submit the documentation, and if funding is available, to be considered for the award. Lastly, I'll share that OSFA also implemented the Gpa Upload Tool. This tool is specific to high schools to allow them to report GPA information on behalf of high school seniors. This new tool will eliminate the need for high school seniors to submit a transcript to our office for consideration of state financial aid for our various programs. We continue to do outreach to high schools to get them to participate in the Gpa Upload Tool, and we are also currently looking into expanding that tool to streamline the process for our high schools. These are just a few highlights that I wanted to share with you to let you know how committed OSFA is to student access as well as innovation. As I move on to the analysis, you have our formal responses to each of the issues raised, but I would like to take a moment to just further elaborate on each of those issues. Beginning with the SAI implementation, which is known as the Student Aid Index. In the testimony, you have an update by bullet of all of the items that was discussed during the recent Federal Student Aid Conference. But what I would like to share with you is that we know that MDCAPS will have to be enhanced to be able to address and implement these upcoming changes. We are consistently in conversation with our vendor, as well as working to identify exactly what those changes will be. We are attending meetings and have been collaborating with other states in order to ensure that this process is implemented. We also know that there is going to be a change to MISFA applicants, whereby we will have to expand the MISFA application to allow those individuals to also be under the new formula, which is the Student Aid Index. We also know that we'll have to work to have an outreach campaign to make sure that our students and external stakeholders that we service are well aware of these upcoming changes. We already had difficulty explaining the EFC, and now transitioning to SAI will provide greater difficulty to some students and families just to understand the process. But we remain committed to making sure that that information is clear as possible to make sure that students understand how their need is determined for financial aid. One thing that I would like to highlight that we are in discussion internally over is that when an individual completes the FAFSA, once SAI is implemented, and they select the option that they will not file, they will automatically receive a negative student aid index. That means that that student has been identified as one who has the greatest need. This new requirement may pose an implication in the Guaranteed Access Grant Program, where we identify those students who are the state's neediest population for state financial aid awards. But if we have a number of students who we feel that are trying to go around the process and be looked at as having the highest need, we may have to implement an internal process just to verify the accuracy of that income. That is still internal discussion on how we'll move forward in that particular implementation. For questions 2 and 3, specific to the FAFSA filing outcomes, nationally, there is an overall decline in the number of FAFSA completions. In January, the federal government also implemented an outreach campaign where they noticed that the number of renewal FAFSA applications this year are also declining. Maryland has seen a decline of 2% from 2021 to 2022, and we remain committed to continuing the outreach to promote the completion of the FAFSA as well as the MISFA application. Recently, MHEC partnered with WIRE Central Maryland, an initiative to help 6,000 students from 6 schools in Baltimore to complete and file the FAFSA or the MISFA. We will continue to promote the FAFSA and the MISFA through outreach organizations, using our website, social media, and through our partnerships. Moving on to question 4, which is regards to the allocation in the GA and EA program and how we ensure the neediest students are awarded first. In accordance with our regulations, we prioritize our awards. Renewal recipients in the Guaranteed Access Program are considered first, then EA renewal recipients, and then initial applicants in the Guaranteed Access Grant Program that met the requirements. Any remaining funds are then utilized for our EA initial recipients, and they are ranked starting with the students that have the greatest need, which would be those with a 0 EFC. To maximize the number of awards that we make in the program each year, we factor in the prior year acceptance rate. For example, we noticed that in our EA initial awards, we average a 30% acceptance rate in the number of awards that are accepted each year. So that percentage is included when we make our awards for initial applicants. And by including that acceptance rate, we are able to maximize the number of awards that we make initially when we perform awarding. If there is any additional funds that become available due to cancellations or declined awards, after we complete initial awarding, we will then go in and hit our wait list to further make additional awards in the program to both EA and GA initial recipients. Moving on to the credit completion requirements. MHEC does inform recipients who have received the award for at least 2 years of the credit completion requirements. We also have information on our website for students to view at any time, so that way they are aware of the credit completion requirements.
Can I stop you 1 second?
Sure.
And just have a question. Just because I've been dealing with so many students lately that don't have any idea what's going on as far as how do I get in, how do I stay in, how do I sign up for my classes, how they just are not aware. How do you make students aware on an ongoing basis what they need to do and how they can get there?
Sure, thank you, Senator King. I can speak to how we communicate with them with regards to our state financial aid process. At the time the student completes their FAFSA, we automatically import the FAFSA into our system, and we send them notification who we are as far as MHEC and what we do. If they meet the requirements for any of our state aid programs that do not require an application, such as the Educational Assistance Grant or Guaranteed Access Grant, we then follow up with another email or text message alert to let the student know what they need to do to move along in the process. We send out a number of correspondence that walks them through that process. And then we also partner with high schools. Each year, MHEC creates a newsletter as well as outreach publications such as a flyer that we share with our external stakeholders to further promote our state aid programs. And it has also, exhibited challenges where some of the students, even with all of that information, still need that touch, you know,
Right.
to get through the process. One thing that we were doing before COVID, and I hope we can go back to soon after we get past this pandemic, is we actually implemented outreach events where we partnered with our local community colleges, and we did on the spot collection of documents where we made ourselves available to students and parents to walk them through the Guaranteed Access Grant Program and Promise, which we saw as our large applicant pool. Those are efforts that we plan to re-implement once we get past this pandemic. And we, at this time, continue to look through other mechanisms, such as virtual appointments. One of the benefits with a virtual appointment outside of a phone call is that individuals have the opportunity to schedule with that person. And we even have the opportunity through a virtual appointment to have them pull up their screen if they're on MDCATs and walk them through the process. And that has been an added benefit for us on this end.
What I hear from so many people, I think they're just intimidated by the whole process. I think that just the idea of higher education with their kids is kind of panicking for them because they think it's got to be expensive. So, so they're almost timid about really even asking or moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I will share with you, Senator King, that one way we can also continue to combat that is to get the information out earlier. I know that we partner a lot with our high schools and we do outreach events, but a lot of those events don't happen until the junior or senior year. So those conversations for those families who may be very timid by the process may need to start as early as 8th and 9th grade if they are preparing to move forward in the college process. And that's something, you know, that I'm sure Secretary Fielder feels very strongly about, that we can further look to see how we can begin that partnership with MSDE to get information out at an earlier time frame, just to say who we are. These are the resources that the state has and so forth.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. I know that time is precious to everyone on this Friday afternoon, so I will be very brief in my last few comments. I just wanted to take a moment just to highlight the response on the promise question that was raised, just to share some additional information about that. It was in the analysis with regards to the promise program and why we have not seen such a greater acceptance rate or outcome, I should say, in the promise program. And it could be for several different reasons. In the state of Maryland, we have a number of community colleges that have their own promise program. And so it is possible that due to the implementation of those promise programs, as well as the states and the same messaging that's going to students, that the process could be unclear. Perhaps as well, the messaging that we're communicating to students with regards to our low-income families could also be a reason as to why we're not seeing a high number of awards accepted. What I mean by that is we get a lot of applications each year for students who have all of their need covered by the federal Pell Grant, where we may need to change our conversation and target middle to high income families, because Promise is a last dollar award that is applied after federal and state financial aid. And so each year, just internally, we often walk parents and students through the process to let them know, yes, you submitted the documentation, you met the GPA requirement and the income requirement, but you didn't get the award because your whole tuition is covered by a federal Pell Grant or another one of our state financial aid awards. So with hopes in changing our messaging and our outreach to target low income and high income families, we may, middle income and high income families, we may also see an increase in the number of awards. One thing that MPAC is committed to doing is partnering with representatives on our Financial Assistance Advisory Council to further discuss the outcomes that we've seen in the Promise program, so collectively we can identify how to move forward. I will stop there and turn it over back to you, Senator, for any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? I don't think there are any. I think we're good. Thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your support. Thank you.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Enjoy Valentine's Day. Yes.